My name is Brian Dawson, and on this episode, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you insight on some of the books that I've read and some of the books that I plan to read in the year 2025. So, first off, I would like to say that reading is very important. I actually was able to double my income simply by reading more. Okay, I was able to learn a lot of things by concentrating my attention. So that's why, as a 30-year-old male, why reading is important to me, right? Because I've actually been able to get results from reading more, right? Now, educational background, I would say that it doesn't matter what your education status is. Okay, you don't have to be a PhD. You don't have to be someone in pursuing a secondary education in order to become a reader and to go on your own personal journey on understanding the universe and the world which we live in, right? But I would say that if you have young children, it's best to teach them how to read in their language or multiple languages. Is important even as an adult to continue to sometimes view the world as a child, to ask questions and to want to know more. So on this episode, what I'm going to do is, like I stated, I'm going to talk about books. On my right, I have books that I plan to read in 2025. On my on my left, I have books that I read in 2024 and the late part of 2023. So at the end of every year on my YouTube channel, I have several platforms on my YouTube channel. I had started doing a series where I talk about books that I read that particular year. Okay, so let's jump into it. So this book I'm close to finishing. This book is called Mexico, Narco Violence and a Failed State by George W. Grayson. And this book received um this this book was well received in the year that it came out. It came out in over a decade ago. But this book, Mexico, Narco Violence and a Failed State, afterwards a lot of YouTube and Netflix, Hulu series were really based on this book right here and the information within this book. I wanted to learn more about Mexico, and not just from this perspective, right? I don't want people to think that I'm only looking at the violence or some of the things that take place in Mexico from this perspective, but from multiple perspectives. But this was a good book. I'm almost done with it. I have about two more chapters in this book, and I think Mexico is a wonderful country. I have some books inside here about many diverse things, but my core interest right now is Latin American history, Native American history, African studies, and also what was going on in Europe prior to colonization. I just recently did a review on this book, The Other Slavery by Andre Resendez. If you see these are my notes that I wrote and I printed out. So I just did a review on this book. It says The Other Slavery, The Uncovered Story of Indian Enslavement in America by Andres Resendez. He is a professor at the University of California, or at least was. I don't know if he still works there. This this author is also a university professor. Um, what school did he teach at? Um, William and Mary. And this, I can't lie, like this book was well written. It gave background on the role of how Mexico became the country that it became. Now, it didn't go so far into the history of like the Spanish American War and things of that nature, but it talks about the history of prohibition in America and all the way to current times. And so it was a very interesting read. I'm going to do a review on that book. The Other Slavery is also a great book. It gave a lot of information about Native American history, things that took place in the country. It talks about Mexico, Central America, the formation of America. You will have to look in the videos on my page where I do a book review on that particular book. I don't want to go into too many details because I got a lot of books I want to touch. So I'm a person that needs motivation, right? Who doesn't need motivation? Sometimes we just don't feel like doing the things that we have to do, right? Well, earlier today, I really felt like that. Earlier today, I was in a zone where I woke up and I just didn't feel that extra oomph, right? And so I ended up putting on some harp music. I like to listen to meditation music. My area was clean. My area was up to par, but it was me. So I lit some sage. I played some music, some really light meditation music, and I opened up one of my books and I started reading. And sometimes we gotta force ourselves to to work through the different emotions that we may feel. So I'm going to talk about an author, and I have two of his books here. I read both of these books. One of these books I gave a review to, and two of these books I've given as gifts to other people because I like the book so much. So this is John C. Maxwell, How Successful People Think. You might see this book at Walmart. I've seen it at airports, at the airport bookstores, and many things like that. It is a great book. I'm not going to lie. Like I pulled a lot of great information from this book. One thing he talks about in this book is creating a place for the individual to feel comfortable enough, as what he calls, to shape their thoughts, to be able to go in and think. He talks about surrounding yourself with other good thinkers. It talks about how our emotions goes into the development of creating uh good ideas. And he has a slogan inside here that's in the introduction, but I really appreciate it. It says the basically the right idea at the right time in the right environment with the right people equals the right result. And I did in 2022, I think I read this book, but I did a review on my channel because I read it at the end of 2022 going into 2023, and this book really helped formulate the energy that I wanted to bring. And one thing he talk about is writing down your ideas. Like sometimes we might get in a vibe or inspiration, and it's important at that moment to jot down your ideas and then allow your emotions to create new ideas. And so he talks a lot about that. And one thing he says in this book that I agree with, he says that good thinkers will always be valuable, and the people who think the best will be in charge, right? But people that are good thinkers, they can survive brutal governments. They could survive hard times because they know how to think and they know how to produce quality ideas that turn into actions, right? So those are really, that's one good book. Another John C. Maxwell book that goes hand in hand with that is How Successful People Lead. Now, as a writer, as a father, and as a traveler, I am a leader by leading myself first and foremost, right? And I use questions and answers. I use logic to be my leader, but I would be untruthful if I said that I have not been inspired by other people or I have not felt inspired by other people in my lifetime. And so How Successful People Lead is one of those books that is really not, it's really not a long book actually, but he talks about the five levels of leadership. I haven't done a review on this book yet, but I should. I always keep notes of the books that I read. Excuse me. Excuse me. So I always keep um notes on the books that I read. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I bought this book in El Paso, Texas. And that's another thing. I got one of my good friends. So what I do with my books is books. So I bought this book. Oh, okay. I bought this book February of 2024. So okay, so this book did come out in 2024. So I get some of my friends or different people that I know, kind of like high school or something like that, to sign or say something in my book. And the reason why I do that is because you never know what you might be going through in life. And with me, books are really personal. So when I read a book, I sometimes want to remember the time period that I read the book in. Let me see this one. This one also. So my friend Robert Henry, he helped me on my journey. We were team drivers in trucking. He helped me a lot. And these books were books that kept me motivated during those days. We had 22-hour days, 23-hour days where literally we would drive individually 600 miles apiece, 700 miles. I think his record was maybe like 750, 760 miles. But Rob averaged over 700 miles when we would drive out west and go in different places. And so these two books, How Successful People Think, How Successful People Lead, and my good guy, my friend, a person I would consider a friend, Robert Henry, really helped me a lot. And these books, he exemplified a lot of those qualities as a leader and also as a good thinker. And I like to surround myself with really good people to keep me motivated. Um Now I didn't put these books in any particular order. So another book that I read that was really good is this book, The History of Cuba. So um I've been to Cuba multiple times. If I was to put a number on it, I've been to Cuba 5 times. So without getting too personal, I was and currently am still dating a person who's a Cuban national. So I was internet dating. I met this girl online named Delanise. We started dating, and so I went to Cuba to visit her in 2023, and then I went several times after that. And I actually purchased this book to learn more about Cuba. Um, in short, she's from the city of Guantanamo. So in order to get to Guantanamo, a person a person would have to fly from usually Miami, but from Miami to Santiago de Cuba, and then from Santiago de Cuba, a person would travel an additional hour to Guantanamo. I would compare that to, like, let's say a person lives in any major city in the United States, right? So you would fly to the major city, and then you would drive to like an hour out to like the next big city or smaller city that the locals would know, but the world may not know. Okay, and so this book talks about piracy, how the original people of Cuba was called the Guanawatabi people, which when I was reading this book and I was asking her about some of these things, it was also educational for her as well. So Guananatabe were the original people of Cuba, and they actually predated the Taino and other Carib Indians that began to colonize Cuba. And the Guanawatabe people, to me, is very close to Guantanamo. So, in my opinion, the Guanawatabe people, they had chiefs. They built their own type of huts. They were a peaceful people, and they were colonized by more warlike and more advanced people that a lot of archaeologists and sociologists believe came from the mainland of perhaps Mexico. Because if you know, Cancun is about 135 miles. If you're in Mexico, it is east, and if you're in Cuba, it is west. And Cuba is also the biggest island in the Caribbean. In my personal opinion, I think that if it wasn't for certain laws, Cuba would be the richest country, one of the richest countries in the world, as well as the Western Hemisphere, just from its proximity to the United States, Mexico, and sitting at the very top of the Caribbean. It could really be a force in the world. It's a great book right here. And also shout out to Captivating History. They write really good books. Okay, so I have Rich Paul Lucky Me. It's a coming of age story. On the back of the book, you have a forward from LeBron James. You have Jay-Z and Jimmy Potato from ESPN, who is the chairman. And when those type of people are uh co-signing your book, you know that the book is interesting. It talks about growing up in Ohio. Um he grew up in Cleveland, Ohio during the narcotic drug era. He talks about a love for his mother, his father. His father was very instrumental in his life, in his development. He talks about how his parents was unwed. He talks about unfortunately having a mother that was dealing with drug abuse, and how he transformed his life. He even talks about his affiliation with the underworld and dealing with narco trafficking. But we have to keep in mind that a lot of times when people open up about their life, it's important not well, we're going to judge, but it's important not to judge too harshly, because it takes courage to be honest about those type of things. And for where he came from and who he became, is a great book. I read this book in 2024. It was a great book. Okay, so I got an old school classic, Shahrazad Ali, The Black Man's Guide to Understanding a Black Woman. This book, to me, if you were to, she was the predecessor to a lot of the online dating coaches, and high value man and top notch dime and all of this stuff. And she puts things into a perspective of the United States. She focused primarily on black male and female relationships. Why are they so dysfunctional? What happened to us? And at the end of it, she talks about solutions of how we can overcome some of these things. And this book was um so pivotal at the time that it came out. But to me, a lot of the books that were written in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s still ring true today. So this is a classic. She talks about how we are taught, women are taught too, to be dishonest to their husbands from a very young age in our communities. She talks about um intercourse, and how intercourse is viewed by the woman. She talks about how marriage is viewed, and even a husband can be on the outside of his own relationship because of the granocracy. And she talks about how these things we have to overcome, because they are not natural. These are things that were put in place to affect our nature, but we have to overcome them. Okay, so I have not completed this book, but because it's one of those books that you actually study from. This is not just a book that you like read, right? Just one after another. But this book is incredibly well written. Now, I don't agree with some of the things in this book, but I would say I would be a hater if I said that the information in this book is not well written. um it talks about ancient Mexico, an enthralling guide to the Aztec Empire, Mayan civilization, Olmecs, Toltecs, and Teotihuacan. It talks about the UNESCO World Heritage Sites of Mexico, Central America, Guatemala. This is a book that I would say that if you're interested in understanding Mexico, and the ancient civilizations in Mexico. It is a must-have in your personal library. But if I was to critique it, I would say that in a certain section of the book, it went out of its way to discredit earlier historians and sociologists and archaeologists who stated that the indigenous people of the America, like the Olmecs and others, are of African descent or share DNA. And one of the things he says in the book, he talks about Raphael Phoenix. He talks about Ivan Van Sertima and other people who made these observations. But one thing he said is that they scientists cannot decode the Olmec language, and that we cannot say what race the people were, but basically because of his own personal opinion, not based on facts, that they were not people of African descent. But what's interesting to me is that he does at the same time acknowledge that many people from different places visited the Americas prior to European colonization. So it was kind of a circular logic that was taking place where I welcome the opinions of others. That was the only thing I didn't agree with. But it didn't affect, it didn't wouldn't stop me from keeping it on my shelf. I think the book is excellent. It's an excellently researched. It's a great book to have on your shelf. I gotta still give Captivating History their credit. I have 3 of their books, or 5 of their books actually. So this one is written by Billy Wellman. I gotta give him his credit. Still a great book, right? And who wants books where you just agree with the talking points, right? The point of learning is to learn. So I haven't done a review on this one. This is You by Eric Thomas, PhD, forward by Chris Paul, one of the greatest motivational speaker probably alive. Definitely helped me in many ways to stay inspired, stay connected, to grind it out, to reach for your goals. In this book, he talks about is a sort of a reflection of a coming in age story. He talks about meeting his wife. He talks about her and the things that she went through with her illnesses. It talks about his life where he was essentially adopted, and he thought that his adoptive father was his real father, and it turned out that he wasn't. He was heartbroken. It was sort of an identity problem that he was having. At 17 years old, the mean streets of Detroit, he decided to drop out of school for a minute and live on the streets. He talks about overcoming that, getting overcoming learning disabilities, getting into university, and the things that shaped him to be who he is. This book actually, you guys, made me cry. I teared up reading this book. Just when he talks about at the end of it meeting his idol, um, and when he met his idol Les Miles, it was almost like, for me, like a Kobe Bryant meeting Michael Jordan for the first time. Like, it was like that. It was very heavy. Shout out Eric Thomas, you're the man. Um, this book is heavy. I actually got my niece to sign this one because it was so inspiring, and I wanted her to read it, and she actually read it. Okay, I recently did a review on this one, the ISIS Papers, Dr. Francis Cress Westland, the ISIS Papers, The Keys to the Colors. It's a series of essays. For the full review of this book, please go to my channel on YouTube as well as my TikTok. I did a full review on this book. What I can say is that she talks about the problems in societies, why, and she talks about symbols. She talks about ball games. She talks about human behavior in this book. She also talks about solutions to the ills that affect the Black community worldwide, and how we can reclaim our esteem by getting ourselves on track. Great book, a psychiatrist. Rest in peace. She passed away, but her legacy lives on, and it's just a classic. Okay, now I did a review on this book, a video essay breakdown. It talks about Mexican history, a captivating guide to the history of Mexico and the Mexican Revolution. It is not such a lengthy book as Ancient Mexico, but I would say that it is wonderfully written, and it goes into so much of uh the history of Mexico in each chapter is jam packed with information. In my opinion, I did a fantastic job sharing this information on my TikTok and as well as on my YouTube. So please check it out. I gotta give them their credit. They did a wonderful job on this book. This is probably, for as information goes, one of the best books I would say that you can use as a launching pad on your journey to understanding the history of Latin America as well as Mexican history. And let me say something. Information is neutral. Knowledge is neutral. Um, that's a quote that I got from Neely Fuller Jr. A person does not have to be a particular ethnic group to get a certain knowledge. Knowledge is universal. Knowledge is not good or bad. Knowledge is neutral. And it's what we do with information that determines how it is viewed. But that is a great book. Now, I'm going to get to one of the books that also touched me. And as a fellow Black American, FBA, Assata Shakur, um, I would argue to understand women and to gain a deeper level of understanding of Black women, this is a must read. First of all, let me say respect to you, sister, to your family. This book right here is life changing. The things that she went through, the horrible things that she went through, the injustice that she went through, giving birth handcuffed to the bed, being denied nourishment, people wanting her to terminate her pregnancy because she was incarcerated. The things that took place in this book, from not just the dominant society, but also in the book, she was almost a victim of SA from other Black Americans. So this was such a deep read. I love the ending of the book. As a person that has been to New Jersey, been to New York, the bridge that she talked about on this, I felt was so groundbreaking. The forward is by Angela Davis. This talks is like a snapshot into the 70s and the things that she went through. Really great book, honestly. And also she talks about how the her college experience and the things that she was learning, and it reminded me how even today things have not changed as much as we think have changed. A lot of people go to university, they some get indoctrinated, but I guess we're all victims of indoctrination. um and we can think that we are more serious, we're really out producing justice when we're really playing around. And this book really will challenge how you view the world. Respect to Asada. Okay, so I got two books left. So Powernomics, I got this book, and this book is talking about economics. Power is written by Dr. Claude Anderson. I have a few of his books on my bookshelf. He's in a class of his own, honestly. Um, he talks about how Black Americans specifically have been disenfranchised, how that particular community has faced so many challenges, He talks about higher education versus trade school. He talks about using both of them to your advantage. He talks about um how our schools are structured. He talks about a lot dealing with the educational system, how that leads to finances. He talks about our place and our role and how consistently we've been let down, and what we can do as a community to educate our children so that they can succeed and they can have a means to provide for themselves. And so a lot of people think that they should go to college and just get a college degree and it's just higher ed. Some people believe that, okay, well, I'm gonna go to trade school, and the trade school is where it's at. And he really talks about, he compares and contrasts both of those. That was my favorite part of the book. And he talks about tying them together, because who says that you just need a college degree, right? Who says you just need a trade? Now, as a person with both of them, I find that in some areas your college degree, in certain parts of the country, your college degree may help you. In certain parts of the country, or when you're talking about survival, your trade may help you. It's all about using your skills and the information that you have to provide for your family and making sure that you survive. Okay. So my last book, I recently did a review on this book that I read in 2024. This is Tariq Nasheed's Foundation, American Race Baiter. These are notes from the book. I already did a review on this book. He talks about the identity of Black Americans and things that we have been through and things that we continue to go through and what we can do to overcome those things. He talks about the global system, and he talks about producing justice and what we can do to empower ourselves as a community. And he also talks about what makes the Black American special group, foundational Black Americans, right? Or we the same as every other Black population on the planet? Well, no, he argues that the Black Americans in America went through ethnogenesis. And he also talks about the history of the um the system of racism, how racism is still overtly and covertly used to restrict people that's considered other from moving freely within society. Really great book. Touch on a lot of closed door conversations that a lot of Black Americans and people that is considered other talk about in private, but wouldn't dare want to talk about this in front of the presence of people in the dominant society. But it's a really great book, and the subtitle I really love: My Journey into Understanding Systemic Racism. So those are books that I read in the end part of 2023, 2024. And then next I'm going to get into books I plan on reading in 2025.